Assalamu alaikum viewers. I am Raouf from IIS. We are going to discuss part 1 of the lecture History Class 10th Nationalism in India. As per JK Bose 2020 syllabus, the first three topics of the book are the World War One, Khilafat and Non-Cooperation Movement. Okay, let us start. World War One started in 28 July 1914 and it ended on November 11, 1918. The basic cause for the World War One were militarism. And militarism was a process of dangerous and burdensome mechanism for the great standing armies in Europe, because we have seen that after the French Revolution, a lot of nations emerged out there after the fall of Habsburg Empire and Ottoman Empire. They started to have a great and strong defense mechanism. By the time they introduced the navies along with the espionage system. Espionage system is a secret information system of secret information. So this was the first basic cause. Second is competitive patriotism. We know patriotism is a loving concern or a devotion towards one or nation, but in the meantime, it resulted in the hatred among the previous rival nations. So it was seen in the form of Germany and France and vice versa. They had a lot of hatred among themselves, which resulted in the World War One. Okay. The next cause will be economic imperialism. We will discuss international rivalry between these two nations, plus other nations as well, because we have seen in the Indian subcontinent many French, Dutch, and Portuguese came in along with the East India Company, and rivalry started. Apart from that, there were different rivalries in the European part of continent. Okay, it led to international market capturing and hatred was being observed between these nations, because they were now newly industrialized nations. They had an industrial revolution which brought enormous wealth to them, but in the meantime it led to the rivalry of market capturing between these industrial nations. So this was seen in the form of Anglo-German rivalry. For that, there is a charter of William II we will discuss. Their rivalry proved a main cause of World War One, because Germany was also a great industrial country and they wanted to explore their markets outside the Europe. Okay, so Germany was jealous of the colonial naval greatness, because we know that in India and subcontinent of Middle East, Gulf countries, England was dominating there. It had its influence on the sea routes as well. So William II wanted to have a trade link between Berlin up to Baghdad through Turkey, and he wanted to construct a railway line in order to promote trade and commerce. But rivalry broke out between the Germany and England, so it resulted in the chaos and confusion, and in the end became a cause for World War One. Next slide. Okay, now we will discuss the immediate cause of the World War One. Immediate cause was the murder of Archduke Ferdinand and his wife Sophie, because Duke Ferdinand was the heir of Austrian throne and he was killed in Sarajevo, that is capital of Bosnia nowadays. So Austrian government held the government of Serbia responsible for the murder. It was a conspiracy made in order to give create tensions in the Balkan region. So that is why Austria attacked the Serbia, and tensions arise in Balkan regions, which resulted later in the emergence of World War One. But the course of war was at a low level, local level, because Austria didn't was not in favor of the big war. So it had great consequences later, because the situation became more and more grave. Other countries of the European continent also joined and jumped into the fray. So we then later on observed there became the two groups. One is called Central Power, another is called Allied Powers. So in Central Powers, Germany, Bulgaria, Austria, Hungary, and Turkey, that is Ottoman Empire, joined the hands. On the opposite side, England, France, Serbia, Belgium, and Japan, Russia, were in hand in hand. Okay, now it took the shape of a bigger war in Europe, and it started later on. Allied powers joined by the time it started in 1914, and Italy joined in 1915. So USA also joined in 1917. It caused a great destruction, loss of property, loss of lives. Thus, this war started. Now, after discussing these immediate causes, we come over that the war was at peak. So, in the Balkan regions, there was a movement that was known as the Greek War of Independence. After the fall of Ottoman Empire, the Balkan regions got independence, and newly emerged nations came into existence. The World War One was won by the Allied powers because USA was in favor of them, and they got a upper hand in that. So, what was the influence of this World War One in the Indian subcontinent? Because the fall of Ottoman Empire gave rise to the Khilafat movement in India. Khilafat movement is also known as the Indian Muslim movement. It started in 1914, ended in 1924. Although we know that it was a pan-Islamic movement, political protesters campaigns were launched by the Muslims in British India, led by Shaukat Ali and Muhammad Ali, joined by the Johar Hakim Ajmal Khan, Abu Kalam Azad, Caliph of Usman, in order to restore him again. Okay, they wanted to restore the Osman Khilafat, and because the Sunni Muslims had a great affection and religious attachment with them, and still we do have, but Khilafat is no more existing in the world presently. So effective political authority came in Ottoman Empire after the First World War was abolished through Treaty of Sevres. So movement collapsed by the late 1922. The Turkey gained a favorable diplomatic position and moved towards the secularism. And they adopted in 1924. They simply abolished the role of caliph because the major role was played by Mustafa Kemal Pasha, but the Ottoman Sultan Abul Hamid II, he was still in favor of recreating or restoring the Ottoman Empire. So he launched a pan-Islamic movement around the globe, and he wanted to protect the dismemberment of the Western and Westernization. That was a concept of democratic structure of the government, which was totally opposite to the Khilafat. He sent an emissary to India. His name was Jamaluddin Afghani. So in 19, which resulted in the Khilafat movement in Indian subcontinent against the Britishers, because it was the British who overturned the Ottoman Empire. So in Turkish War of Independence in 1990 to 23, Turkish revolutionaries led by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, that is Mustafa Kemal Pasha, and he abolished the Khilafat by Treaty of Sevres. We already discussed it, and another treaty was signed, Treaty of Lausanne, 1923, which was pursuant to the Atatürk reformists that the Republic of Turkey abolishes the position of Khalif, that is Caliphate, in 1924, and transferred its powers within the Turkey to the Grand National Assembly of Turkey. Okay, so on the other hand, you see on the pictures, there is Mustafa Kemal Atatürk at the top and Ali brothers in below the picture. They started a movement in India that is known as Khilafat movement. They were joined by the lot of religious scholars and prominent Muslim reformers, namely Dr. Mukhtar Ahmad Ansari, Raisul Muhajirin, Barrister John Muhammad Jinejo, and also joined by the Hasrat Moani and Sayyid Ataullah Shah Bukhari, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, and Hakim Ajmal Khan, in order to form an All India Khilafat Committee. Next. So, by the time, on the other hand, when Gandhi came from Africa, 1915, he came to India. So he started a movement from Champaran, then came to Kheda and Ahmedabad. So later on, he wanted to have a mass movement against the Britishers in India. So he thought that let us join hands with the Muslims in order to have a joint unity and resistance movement against the Britishers. So he made a Kolkata session in Kolkata meeting that he discussed that we must go for a uniform and united movement against the Britishers called Khilafat Non-Cooperation Movement campaign. Okay, so it was a successful ad earlier, but he made it clear to the people of India that boycott all the legislative councils and government schools, colleges, foreign goods, even government services, government functions, and surrender all titles and distinctions. Okay, so the people followed him because he was considered to be now a new face in the political scenario of Indian freedom struggle. So massive protest strikes and acts of civil disobedience spread across India. So he reputed and reformed his own revolutionaries who took a great and a major role in spreading this nationalist movement across India. So Hindus and Muslims collectively offered a resistance, okay, which was initially peaceful, but Gandhi and Ali brothers and other were arrested and they were imprisoned by the Britishers under the flag of Tehrik-e-Khilafat. Okay, we have observed that Tehrik-e-Khilafat, Punjab Khilafat deputation comprising Maulana Manzoor Ahmad and Maulana Lutfullah took a leading role throughout India after the arrest of Ali brothers and Gandhi. Okay, with a particular concentration in Punjab, in the areas like Sirsa, Lahore, and Haryana, they tried to propagate and continue the movement against the Britishers. Okay, later on we see the non-cooperation movement that was actually launched on 4 September 1920 by Gandhi with the aim that self-governance and obtaining the full independence is our motto. Although before that he started Satyagrah movement. Satyagrah was the path of truth and non-violence. So later on, when All India National Congress joined hands in order to fight against the Britishers, uh, they later on withdrew the support because the British Imperial Legislative Council passed a law act called Rowlatt Act on 21st March 1919, so which resulted in the Jallianwala Bagh massacre of 13 April 1919. In the end, we will discuss how non-cooperation Khilafat came to decline, what were the causes which led to the decline of these collective movements of Muslims and Hindus. Number one incident we already discussed was Jallianwala Bagh. Now we will here discuss the Chori Chora incident. It had already had a negative consequences when the protesters targeted the government offices, police stations, and other places, public places, by pelting stones or letting set them on fire, etc. Okay, so Chori Chori incident stopped the nationalist movement and single-handedly by Gandhi on 10th March 1922. But Gandhi, when he was arrested and he called off the movement, later on he was imprisoned for 6 years for publishing the seditious material against the Britishers, and this led to the suppression of the movement and was followed the arrest of other leaders too. On the other hand, the Rowlatt Act resulted in the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, which is in now Punjab. There was a lieutenant governor called O'Dwyer. In his tenure, there occurred an incident which we already named. It is Jallianwala Bagh on 13th April 1919. Actually, Gandhi at early gave the Hartal call on 6 April 1919, which continued after 13 April. A lot of people gathered in this Jallianwala Bagh. They were celebrating the festival of Baisakhi, but the revolutionaries who were taking part in the revolutionary movement reached to this sad point, and they also entered into this Bagh, and the chaos and confusion started because they didn't know these people are here gathered for celebrating the Baisakhi. In the meantime, the news reached to the lieutenant governor's office, and he ordered the General Dyer. He was his general that time. His full name is Reginald Dyer. To take action. Before taking action, they passed a martial law. Martial law was military law where the governance, the actions of the government are taken under by the military. That we call nowadays emergency was imposed. So General Dyer reached the set point. He ordered to close all the exit points and later on ordered for open firing up to 10 minutes. This incident was one of the deadliest incidents in the freedom struggle of Indian nationalism. Okay, so He subsequently administered the martial law in Punjab and 15 April and backdated to 30 March 1919. Actually, when he wrote a book published that is called India as I Knew It, he backdated the martial law and the incident of Jallianwala Bagh. Although Jallianwala Bagh took place on 13 April 1919, he changed the date of the martial law on 30 March 1919. So it must be obvious and clear to all the readers that it was not due to the martial law Jallianwala Bagh took place. Okay. Later on, the administrator of Punjab, he preoccupied the threat of terrorism and spread of the political education in order to stop them. They continued the brutal behavior. So in 1940, the retaliation for the massacre, O'Dwyer was assassinated by the Indian revolutionary called, namely his name was Udham Singh.